So with the ready state, you have some kind of an overall, I don't know what to call it, an overall framework for how you view things, and principles is one part of that. And what are your other parts? I saw this on your Instagram a few days ago, but you have principles, and then what else comes with that?
Well, I think what people don't understand about our work or my work is really trying to come up with a model that explains, predicts, and is communicatable around complex movement behavior. That sounds like what did I even say? What I'm
Hmm.
saying is, for the last 10,000 years, we really haven't evolved or changed much. Let's start with that hypothesis that I'm a little fatter, your femur's a little longer, but we look very much the same the last 10,000 years. And that means that the shoulder is still the shoulder and the hip is still the hip.
Hmm.
And let's also acknowledge for a second that humans are ruthlessly clever and obsessed with optimization. Not in the like, I'm going to biohack and drink this fat coffee and sit in front of this LED light, but like, how do I carry this rock further? How do I outthrow my friends? How do I wrestle more effectively?
Hmm.
And I think what's really interesting is that if you take that view, then all of a sudden you were like, wow, every movement tradition, every martial art tradition, every yoga tradition, every fighting or gymnastics tradition or track and field tradition is really about the sort of continuing refinement of people thinking this is a better way to get the most biomotor function. This is how we get the most wattage, the most power, the most output, the quickest runners. And then all you have to do is drive some consilience. So if you suddenly really, really, truly understand a little bit of how the shoulder works, then you go to a yoga class and you're like, oh, this is super clever. Like they knew this. And then you're like, oh, I understand Olympic weightlifting. And then you're like, oh, Joseph Pilates wasn't wasting anyone's time. He understood this too.
Hmm.
And so there are principles about how the body works. And what we're trying to do is help people on a very base level say, hey, look, you should be able to put your arms over your head. That's really cool. And
Hmm.
and if you can't, that's fine. It's totally your choice. And it may or may not cause you pain. One of the really big things that we're trying to change here is we have to evolve away from only asking, does this thing cause you pain or not? Right? Because I'll tell you what, just raise your hand if you're pain free. I mean, and what you'll
Right.
see is that most people are not raising their hands because they have an old injury history or they got tackled and their knee is stiff or, they had to sit or something. So pain is this normal condition of the human body. But what we shouldn't be doing is making all of our decisions about, do I have pain or no pain? Because I can give you a bottle of bourbon and erase your pain.
Hmm.
I can give you opiates and THC and I can erase your pain. So I can, if you're a man, if you're a cis, hetero man, a beautiful person can walk past and you're like, whoa, wow, I feel great. All of a sudden there can be, so what we know is that the brain is the most sophisticated structure in the known universe, and pain is a complex psycho-emotional, personal experience. We all have sort of different experiences with this. But if we just wait around to say, I need to change my behavior because I'm in pain, then that really, there's a big gap there, right? Between my 13-year-old playing all the water polo and then not playing water polo because something hurts in her shoulder. So
Hmm.
clearly there are some things we can do. And now it gets a little muddy because now we're like, well, are we talking about injury prevention? Because there's nothing we can do to prevent injuries. I'm like, is that true? Because let's first define our terms. Are you injured? Yes or no? Injury means you cannot occupy your role in society. You can't do your job. You can't occupy a role in the family. You can't recreate. You can't go to education. That's a medical emergency. If your back hurts so bad you can't do your work, that's a medical emergency. We want you to go
Hmm.
get help. And our medical system is really good at putting those flames out temporarily. But our current medical model is predicated on emergency and catastrophe,
Hmm.
and is not set up to tell you how to live or how to move or how to think about technique or skill being a human being. So what we're trying to do is help people move beyond this conversation of pain or no pain, because that's really like, oh, I should do yoga because my back hurts. Like, that's the worst reason to do yoga ever, right?
Well,
And
for a lot of reasons, but
or
yeah.
or like, hey, so I should change my behavior because I should put oil in my car because it blew up my engine. I mean, that's really what we're waiting around. That's our current model. And don't get me wrong, a movement practice is the way out of this. I don't care what your movement practice is. We're totally agnostic. And in fact, if you go into the work or writing, you can see that I am like pro Pilates and pro yoga and pro CrossFit and, pro Olympic lifting, pro gymnastics, because ultimately I don't care. I have strong feelings, and we can argue about, should you be bench pressing? How fit do you need to be? But ultimately, are you taking your tissues through their normative physiologic ranges? Do you have control in those ranges? That's defining mobility. Do your tissues give you access to your positions? And that can be also brain and nervous system, but also, do you have the control there? Do you have the technique there? And what we've been trying to do is go into our movement traditions and reconcile those movement traditions with what we understand from my background of classical physical therapy education and our medical model. And there should be no dissonance or points of interference. Those things should overlap beautifully on top of one another. And suddenly we can say, okay, I see that you not only can't put your arms over your head, but you can't create any rotation when you put your arms over your head. You can't create any torque. You can't create any stability in that position. So that's a really weak position. Well, it's interesting to us then to ask, well, how do we restore that position? And it turns out sometimes you need a little help. And that help could be a mobilization. Sometimes you need a little skill training. That could be a skill transfer exercise or technique transfer exercise. But the first order of business is to spend time in the position. So this morning, I'm drinking my coffee, checking my email, sitting on the ground cross-legged, sitting in a full squat. Why? Because the most important thing I can do is make sure that I'm telling my brain and my body, these are positions I value, and these are normative ranges. These are the ranges that I want to have so that I can be more powerful in my deadlift, or that my biking is more fluid, or that if I go drop into a yoga class in my neighborhood later on, I'm not going to fall on my face, and I'm going to be able to actually enjoy that. I mean, Iyengar was like, holy crap, these people can't even do yoga. We better pull out these straps and blocks because they can't even get into the shapes. Right. So, what I really am a fan of is regression and progression and simplifying the model. I think we're drowning in tactics and tools and systems, but they're all the same. And ultimately, I want you to find something that you really like to do, that's super fun, that makes you tribal, and it puts you into a community of people that makes you feel jacked and strong and capable for the sports and the activities that you want to do.
Hope you enjoyed that. Click over here if you want to watch another clip from the podcast. If you haven't subscribed, click over here to subscribe and check out full episodes on any major podcasting platform, full video episodes on the Better Man Podcast YouTube channel.